Hey, so in this video, we are simply going to add a health bar to the player like this. So along the bottom of the screen, we'll have a health bar. We'll have imported a package to do that. And what will happen is that as the player's health compared to their maximum health changes, the health bar will move. And it's a very flexible and fast health bar system that we've provided you with. I'll talk you through that in a moment. So I'll see you in there. Hello, and good day to you. So let's talk about health bars. In order to do anything else with damaging enemies, we really need to have some idea of how much health we have and how much health the enemies have. So we're going to focus on the player health bar here. Right, so what I've done, you're looking here at a prototype. So I've jumped ahead a little bit and I've created a few things. I've created a game canvas and some player health images and a player health script. I'm going to talk you through now how that's put together, and then we'll export that as a custom package so you can start to see how to do that. The cool thing about that is once you get into that process, you can start sharing bits of your game and modular bits of behavior with other people. So the key is going to be keeping it modular. So we'll export and then we'll import into our actual project, the state that we're in, and we'll go from there. So right now you're looking a step ahead. So I'm just going to show you how I'm going to export the package. In a few minutes, I'll give you, well, you've already got access against this lecture to the custom package I'm going to make. So you don't need to follow what I'm doing right now because you won't have this stuff in your project, all right? We're reviewing the structure of the health bar pack right now. So what I've done is I've gone into the game and I've put in a game canvas as a start. Now, this is a screen space overlay canvas. That means that it just gets rendered over the top of everything, not even taking into account any camera effects or any foreground objects. It's just overlaid right in front of everything before the camera even starts rendering, right? So it's a screen space overlay canvas. Now, one of the weird things about these canvases is the way that they appear on the screen, in that the scene is tiny down here. That whole world is this little green blob, and then suddenly you've got this big old canvas here. Now, if you try moving around here, you may have to hold down the Shift key as well. So I'm holding down the right mouse button to be into view mode, and then the Shift key to get some idea of how big this guy is. But really, if you're working on a canvas, you're better off just flipping into 2D mode and then double-clicking on the canvas. Again, you don't have this in your game yet. I just want to show you the structure. I have a canvas. It's a screen space overlay canvas. Inside that canvas, we have a little text note here that says press G to enter direct control mode. It's literally a text object anchored to the top left of the screen. What does that mean? It means that if we go into the game view here and detach the window so that it's free to change size, if I can detach the window, there you go. What that means is if I move around, if you keep an eye on this press G to enter direct control mode, as I move, it always stays anchored to the top left when I let go of the drag, all right? So I've got a text element like that, just as a note. I've then got a health bar, which is sitting down here. Now that is anchored slightly strangely to the bottom of the screen with limited width here. So my anchor points, always think about anchor points. The moment you put an element down, the health bar is sitting there anchored to this point and this point on the screen. It's good enough for now. Let me show you the effect of that. The effect is that it never touches the side of the screen, but yet as I rescale the game window, the health bar occupies always like, 2/3 or so, or about a half of the screen width, but in the middle of the screen. And it always stays a fixed distance from the bottom of the screen and always anchored to these relative points, yeah? Hopefully that makes sense what those anchors are doing now if we look back at them. There they are. I also have a health bar mask which goes over the top of that. So the way that I'm doing health bars right now is simply providing you with two images. One is a health bar, which for the moment is just a bar that is twice as long as, let me just get rid of this, submit, which is twice as long as the actual space it fits in. And what it does is it wraps around as what we do is we just scroll the texture. So we load the whole texture in and we just scroll it around the space. The advantage of doing things this way is that we can make that health bar look as pretty or ugly as we want. So if you wanted it to be bubbling blood, then you could do that. If you wanted it to be anything really, wood, any image you want, you can put in this Photoshop file. Or if you want, we can export it for you as a PNG. You can ask for that. We're using Photoshop because it's directly compatible straight into Unity. But as I say, these things could also be PNGs. And anyway, I encourage you to make your own asset. So this is a really simple asset here. You can look at its dimensions once you import it later. Just by looking here, you can see that it's a 2048 by 32 pixel. So I encourage you just to make something of your own. And this is the green portion. This is the red portion. It's just going to scroll around. So you can make that as detailed as you like. We've also got a health bar mask, which is literally a transparent mask that sits on top of that. So for example, imagine you wanted it to look like mercury. You would make, the green look like mercury, the red look like the background of the mercury thermometer, and then the overlay on the top maybe would simulate the glass. It may have the sheen of the glass, it may have some dirt on it. So even though our health bar looks really rudimentary right now because we haven't yet committed to an art style, it's a very flexible and fast way of doing things. All right, and they are provided just as raw images because that's all we need. And what we're going to do ultimately is we're just going to offset the X values like this to have the illusion of the health bar moving in code. So talking about the code, what code do we have? We have if we look at the health bar itself, it is comprised of a raw image and a health bar script. Let's go look at that health bar script. Then I'll export it all and we'll bring it into our project. That's when you need to start doing something. So far, you should just be watching, not attempting to follow me because I'm not importing, I'm talking you through what's here. So it requires a type of raw image. Why is that? Well, you can see that the player health bar is specifically about a player and it requires a raw image. So we said require component there, raw image. Then what do we keep references to? We keep references to a health bar raw image and a player. It does depend on the player. We then go and find the player. There is no player script in our game yet, so when we first import this will not work. We need to import a player. We go and find the component raw image. That should work fine. And then we just do a little bit of maths down here to say, well, what is the X value that we need to offset? That little X value that I just dragged here, the UV rect X value that allows me to wrap around. To do that calculation, I've just done the work for you. You query the player for their health as a percentage. We'll write that function in a moment. You divide by 2, you take off 0.5 as an offset, you negative the whole value so the thing moves in the right direction, and that's the X value of the offset. And then you say, well, go ahead and offset the UV rect by that X value, nothing in the Y, and then there is some other parameters here, and I can't even remember what they are. Let's take a look. What is this third parameter? That's just to do with width and height. So we are drawing half the width of the actual rectangle, because remember, the rectangle is twice as wide as it needs to be, so we draw half the width and the full height. So that's what that's saying. That's about how you scale this guy inside the game in terms of its width, like this. You can see these widths are wrong because we're tiling wrongly. And you can see that if I change the height at all, then I just get parts of the gradient or multiple gradients. So the height should be 1. All right, so that's how that works. Now, let me show you how, moving on to the next section of the video, how to export a custom package. We need to think about this being independent. It's not completely independent because it depends on the player, but it's as good as we're getting right now. So if I just select the game canvas, which is this prefab here, the 2 PSD files and the script, and I just right click and say export package, it's going to basically choose nearly everything because if it follows all the references, it finds nearly everything in our project. So I'm going to untick include dependencies. Now we just have the 4 things I selected. I'm going to go ahead and export that into, well, it's going to end up in your lecture, but I'm going to export it as health bar package v1. Okay, so now that is a Unity package. Now what I'm going to do is revert my project to where you are. So here's my version control system, get cracking, and we're going to just slowly show you version control and then bit by bit start showing you how to use it. But the benefit here is I've made a bunch of changes, and I'm just going to what we call stash them. That's put them on the side and just ignore them. This has taken my Unity project already back to the exact state I left you with in the last video, which is really helpful. Then if we go back into Unity, it's going to say, hang on, mate, I need to reload. That's fine. If we reload and play now, then there won't be any health bar, and we're back where I left you. So this is the point where we move to importing a custom package. So I've exported a custom package, literally just saving a bunch of Unity files into a package. What does that mean? Well, we've imported packages before. Let's take a look. We're going to import a custom package into our assets. So wake up. This is the time where you get to actually join in and do the video. Go get the health bar v1 or whatever the latest version is. I might iterate it after this video, and it'll be very similar. If I do, go and get the package, the custom package. Go find it, and it's going to be against your lecture. Import those 4 things that we exported, the game canvas, the 2 PSDs for the foreground and the background of the health bar, and the script. When you do that, I'm going to expect to get an error. It's going to say type or namespace player cannot be found. So let's take a look where the error is. Well, it's because it doesn't understand this type player, because there is no player in the game at the moment. So let's go fix that up. I'm going to go to my scene, my combat scene. Going to go look at the player, get out of 2D mode. and then the player has no player script on it. So inside the player folder, I'm going to create a new C# script and make the minimum functionality that I need for this player to provide what the health bar is expecting. So I take the player, I drop the script onto player. It won't let me yet because there are compile errors in a different script. So it's saying player does not contain a definition for health as percentage, okay? So we need to make, if you see in the player health bar, it is querying player.health as percentage. What is this player.health as percentage? Is it just a public property of player? Well, it could be, but you know that I wouldn't have done that. This is going to be a getter, isn't it? The player.health as percentage is going to be a getter. And the way it's written is like this, which I've got over here. I will just go and pull that code in for you and explain it now. So let's open the player script. And let's just paste in the getter. Remember how the getters work. They say public float health as percentage, get, and then you return what you need to return. So this tells us that to get a health as percentage, we need to be thinking about our current health points and our max health points. So I am going to start off with a serialized field, max float. Why float? Well, health points only make sense as a float. You don't really want them to be completely discrete health points because you want infinite flexibility in the way that you add and subtract health points. You can't strictly count a health point. You're kind of varying degrees of dead, right? So we're going to have a max health points as a float, serializable, visible in the inspector, changeable by the designer, and I'll give it a code default value of 100. I'm going to put it all in one line. I prefer that. Then I'm going to leave a space, and I'm just going to have a private float, which is going to be current health points, and I'm going to default that to 100. Okay, so this is about as thin a player class as you can possibly have. The player now just has the concept of max health points and current health points, and a getter for getting the health as a percentage. It's unnecessary really to cast this max health points into a float, which is why Visual Studio's made it grey. So I'm going to end up with just this final code. Okay, let's see the effect of that over on the player. We can now drag the player script onto the player prefab. Now the player prefab has a max health points at the bottom. Let's try playing the game. Okay, so why aren't we having any UI? Well, that's relatively obvious, I hope, that the game canvas prefab needs to be dropped into the scene. So I drop the game canvas. There it is in the scene now. We have a look and see if the health bar is all wired up. It seems to be. Health bar mask. Everything looks like it did in my prototype. If I play the game now, we get a health bar. Great. So the player can move around. Player health bar's at the bottom here. Now, how do we know it's working? Well, I've skipped ahead. I have already told you how to create the player class and test. So let me just recap that before we test this is working. This is the player class. Super simple, right? A publicly exposed max health points, a private current health points, because we don't need to be going in and on the player tweaking the current health points, but we do want to tweak the max health points. And it simply has a getter. How do we test this bar? Well, one way would be just to change the health points. If I change the max health points to 200, we would expect to be now at 50% health, because presumably the current health points hasn't changed. And as I change the max health points, the bar changes. If we go below the max health, things go wrong. That's fine. We can deal with that later. And if we go too high, well, it's fine. It just gets a lower and lower percentage. If I had 10,000 health points, then we'd be showing 1%, hardly visible. If I had 1,000, it'd be 10%, which is 1/10, and so on. I hope you get the idea. 300, 1/3. Okay, basic maths. So that is working, right? This guy, all we had to do is to have a player class available. Now, we could arguably decouple this even more, but you do have to have some sort of link, right? The player health has to read from something, and it's as good a way for it to just... the health bar needs to read from something, and it's as good a way as anything to just say to the player health, hey, what is your health as percentage? You could also do a getter method on the player, like get current health. It's just more typing. You would have to, in the health bar, say something like player.getHealth as percentage, and then, the method call. And that would be here instead, and it's just more messy. That's why I'm using a getter. This is safe. We can't write to it. If I try and go player.health as percentage equals 10 or whatever, and it's going to moan at me and say property or index that cannot be assigned to, it is read-only. So it's exactly the type of protection we want. It's a similar philosophy to using over in the player, this serialized field. It says, well, another class cannot set this value of max health points, but the designer can see and set it. So it's a pretty ideal setup. Cool. So I have a simple challenge for you. I want you to basically do what I've just done and make sure that you have added your health bar. Now, here are the specs to pass the challenge. I want yours to look different to ours. So when it comes in, do something with it. Rescale it, or at least go into the image, or if you can't open PSDs, rather than whinging and saying, hey, I can't open PSDs, I haven't got Photoshop, how about you just go and make yourself a image that is, and I'll give you the spec, in anything, Paint or whatever, an image that's 2048 pixels wide by 128 high for the mask and by 32 high for the health bar image itself. So 2048 by 32 for the health bar image and 2048 by 128 for the mask. The mask is optional. So make it look different to ours. Update with the player's max health changes. So that's what it should do. It should update, as I've just showed you, when we change the player's max health. That's a spec of the challenge. You need to understand how it functions. Have a poke around after you've imported the package. And also, I'd like you to have shared a screenshot in the discussions forum so that we can see what your health bar looks like. And again, be careful about committing too much to an art style right now because we're not quite there in the project yet. On the other hand, make sure that you know that you are able to adjust the looks of that health bar by changing the underlying images. There's nothing more for me to do in this video because I have already explained how it works and done all that. Of course, I'm effectively sharing with you guys by making this video. So I've done all that and you do all that now, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.